What's going on, Duke basketball fans? It's Jack and JD, and that was a fun one. That was a fun one.
Yeah,
It got a little bit dicey towards the end of the first half. I had not didn't think we would lose the game, but thought it could be a close game down the stretch. You, on the other hand, were very confident that this was going to swing back in Duke's favor. Talk a little bit about that.
so what I was seeing in the first half is that the way in which Georgia Tech made their run, and they had hit five in a row to close out that first half, and they brought the score down to just a 5 point lead, that there was another gear for our defense, which it just, we are that good on defense. And it was, the first half score was 41-36. And I said, we're better than that. We can hold teams to under 50. And so I was confident that we could step up the defense, but and then what can I say? We scored 41 points in the first half, and we scored 41 points in the second half. And so I thought our offense would remain the same. We have too many weapons. Hey, what's behind your head?
We got a little our house going
Oh,
on.
look at this. It's our house. It certainly was. We were in Atlanta and it was our house. The fans were taken out of that game until the end of the first half. And then within the first segment of the second half, it became our house on the road, which is, you know, pretty exciting and very special. And special shout out to Cooper Flag. Finally, Jack, how old is he?
He's 18 now. Can't say it anymore. He's 18.
You
Happy
can't.
birthday, Cooper.
And it wasn't even his best game. It really was like a birthday present for K2, but we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah,
As you,
I'll get to it. I'll get to it right now because what you were alluding to in terms of the one time the crowd was able to get into the game, end of the first half, how would Duke respond to start the second half? And so it starts off. This was, it was kind of like a microcosm of the game because in the first segment of the second half, the first 4 minutes, it was the Kon Knueppel show, and it starts off with a Kon to Malawach alley oop, which was the first of a couple, and then
and hold on, wait, just stop right there for a second. Can we? I don't want to slow you down, so I'm just going to say Bayheim announcing Mal, the big man.
the big guy
Come on, the big guy. Come on, Malowich.
Malawach.
All right, or Mal, as I call him.
Yeah.
He could only get to the big guy. All right, take us through K2.
Well, all right. Since you took us on that tangent, the other part that was rather comical was Bayheim kept saying, "I don't understand why he's operating out of the pick and roll. He's an off the ball guy." And Khan to Malawach pick and roll game has been one of the better aspects of Duke's offense throughout the early part of the season. Khan has done the best job of anybody at finding Malawach for alley oops or just around the basket. And so the reason why it starts off with that alley oop, and then Lance Terry hits a 3-pointer for Georgia Tech. So it was like a big response bucket. But then from Sion James finds Proctor open from the corner, which was a big 3-pointer for the
Yep.
momentum of the game. And then it's all Kon Knueppel. Kon Knueppel mid range, another alley oop to Malawach, and then Cooper Flag with the turnaround mid range shot, and it goes from 41-36 at the half to 52-39 within 4 minutes, and from that point the game never really got close. And so this was the Kon Knueppel show. This was the guy that a lot of us Duke fans had been waiting for since really the first two games of the season. He's kind of been in a a bit of a slump since then. He hit his second and third threes today. He finished with 18 points, hit 3 3-pointers. No, 4 3-pointers. I sold him short. And 4 for 8. He had 5 assists. This was just an awesome game for Kon Knueppel, who he'd been going through it, But with all that being said, his defense still had been solid while he hadn't been shooting the ball well, and it did feel like a matter of time for this to happen. Although I certainly will admit that there were some doubts as to how much stock we put into those first couple games, because in the beginning of the season, we were saying he could be the leading scorer of this team, and it didn't quite look like that. But this was an awesome sign moving forward.
The New York Times did a whole article about K2. They were promoting him as being outstanding, and the game starts with, I believe, him clinking it off the back of the rim. That's his first attempt. And you go, okay. But as you pointed out during John Shire's last post game, he said, I want them just to go out there and relax a little bit. Not so much have fun. I was, misinterpreted it a little bit. And I don't know what he said to K2. He said, just relax. And the guy was phenomenal. It wasn't just his shooting. It was his passing. It was his ability to contest rebounds, his defense. He had an all-around game that we would normally talk about Cooper Flagg. He had that kind of game this afternoon.
Yes, absolutely. And to your point, what I liked the most was his second shot after he missed that first one was no hesitation. Like, he was going up right away, kind of like Isaiah Evans, who that guy does not hesitate at all. And so that was
no conscience.
And it was nice to see Kon, take a page from Evans' book in that sense and just fire away, because we know the guy is shooting above 90% from the free throw line. He's a great shooter. And he had been taking good looks. It just seemed like it was more mental than anything. So it was really nice to see him get going. And speaking of get going, especially in the second half, come on, Malawach. The first half, it was all about his defense. He was.
Sorry, you mean the big guy?
Yeah, the big guy, right? The big guy. It was all about Kaman's defense in the first half, because I don't have plus minus numbers. I wish I did, but it felt like Georgia Tech would go on their runs when Mal was on the bench, especially Powell. When he would get his points, it seemed to me like the vast majority of his points were when Malawach was on the bench. And the second half, especially Kon Knueppel, Duke did a good job of finding him. He finished this game. He had 4 points at halftime. He finished with 15. Another excellent performance from the free throw line. 5 of 6 from the free throw line. A perfect 5 for 5 from the field. He had 8 rebounds. He even had a couple assists to boot and a block. Malawach just had an awesome game today, and he seems to be building from the Incarnate Word game. I know in the George Mason game he didn't get a lot of touches, but he did hit free throws. It's just really rare to have a big guy who, when he goes to the free throw line, you're like, yeah, I feel very confident he's going to knock down both of these. And he's just
you left out one stat. How about a big guy that also will dive for the ball?
7'2" on the floor.
Dive for the ball. I mean, it's like his maturity.
The Duke bench several times today was, really going crazy, and it seemed like, I can't say every time, but it was certainly when Malawach dove for the ball, and then later on Kon dove for the ball, and then was followed up by Proctor going for it, and
that was great sequence.
Was going crazy. They were really into those moments.
So, the expression, you can't buy a shot when you're shooting and it just won't go in. For Georgia Tech, it wasn't that they couldn't buy a shot. they couldn't get a shot. That defense was so locked down in the second half. They scored 20 points in the second half. I mean, it was, and that's why I was feeling pretty comfortable at halftime saying, defense
Georgia
hasn't even
Tech,
tried.
I think they kept Bayheim. I don't remember who the play-by-play guys. I apologize. He had a tough job today, but they would refer to them as like prayers. And there was like 3 or 4 near the end of the shot clock where Georgia Tech had to throw something up in the first half, and they just kept falling. And I was like, yeah, maybe it's just not our day, in the sense that Georgia Tech just keeps hitting these kinds of shots. But my thought more so in the second half was that Terry could get going or George could score some points, because I knew Powell wouldn't. It really wasn't in his game to go score 20. But I thought some of the other guys could get going, and it just didn't happen. And they were missing 3 rotation players in this game. But with that being said, I think today shows the difference between this year's Duke team and last year's Duke team, who played a similar Georgia Tech team and lost one and won one. And the game that Duke won was more or less a closely contested game. And this one, albeit with the scare at the end of the first half, or the close contest at the end of the first half, I should say, wasn't much of a game for the majority of it.
No, no. And for our listeners, never was a Jim Boeheim fan. He was doing the color today, commentating, and at Syracuse, he deserves credit for his history as being a really, really good coach and taking these Syracuse teams deep. But his color commentating today left a lot to be desired. It was as if he said, I just showed up, I can do this. He didn't really bother looking at the Duke thing. You pointed out how he didn't understand K2's play. He didn't know the name of Mal. They just a big guy, and after he was corrected 3 times, he couldn't get it right. And it's sometimes, the announcers can help make a game exciting. And I really felt bad for the play-by-play guy, because he was doing his best to draw analysis out from Jim Boeheim. But I'm sorry. I hope we do not see him again as the color commentator on the ACC network.
Well, I got news for you. We probably will, considering there's 18 more ACC games, and I'm sure that when Duke plays SMU or a Boston College, they're not going to be rolling out the A team, and so there's a decent chance we could see him again. I think you just gotta.
I want him benched.
I think you gotta just try to look at it, albeit it's certainly not nearly as comical, but as like a Bill Walton, where you're not gonna get, the traditional informative commentary, but you might be entertained, and where it's not. I'm trying to be generous here, because you're not. It's not quite. Bill Walton was pretty entertaining, Rest in peace to a legend. But listen, I guess back on the Duke side of things. I thought our backcourt today was pretty good, and Proctor had a couple of nice drives to the basket and tough finishes. His 3-ball a couple of times was in and out. Like, I think he finished with 10 points, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 10 points.
10.
1 for 4 from 3, and one of them was a trail 3 that he missed badly. And Boeheim even made a comment about that's not a typical Duke shot, but it's Tyrese Proctor's shot. Like, he really loves to shoot that 3 when he's trailing the play. So I didn't mind it. And then the other 2 were in and out. So he could have very easily, had a 16-point performance instead of 10. And his defense, per usual, was really good. And Sion James continues to do a good job since he was inserted into the starting lineup. 7 points, and then pretty well rounded 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal today. And most importantly, from what I deem him to be the starting point guard, no turnovers.
Sion James, uh, yeah, well, another thing that Boeheim didn't quite get right, which was, he referred to Sion James earning his way to the starting lineup. And you and I may quibble about this a little bit, but I really think Foster lost the starting lineup position to Sion James, who was more than ready to do it, but that Coach Shire definitely wanted in the beginning of the season. Foster was his starting guard. And I think since the change has been made, Sion's maturity, I look at him and I go, may I never run into a pick that guy sets. The guy, and apparently also just an all-around good human being, great guy in the community, great guy off the court, and terrific leadership. So I think that is a really good change. And Foster's minutes today, I don't know if you have them, but he was out twice. I mean, he really didn't accumulate a lot of minutes.
Yeah, so all right, you gave me a lot to chew on there, so I'm gonna try to break it down one at a time. On Sion James, first off, if you want to support Sion James with what he does off the court, because to your point, he is a great person. He's got the Sion James Foundation. They just did a big, I think it was like a toy drive this past weekend. So last weekend, they donated a bunch of stuff for a good cause. So if you want to support him, go check it out there. If you want to support us, drop a like. We want to hear from you guys in the chat. And as far as Foster is concerned, I thought his first half, he started off good. He had a nice assist to Sion James, and then missed a 3. Good look. Thought his release, maybe that's part of the reason, was a little bit slow. And then he turned it over in the corner, stepping out of bounds. However, first half, not good. Second half.
Never should step out of bounds. That is just like, of all the things you could do wrong on a basketball court, not knowing where your feet are is just one of the cardinal sins.
Second half, though, he did finish with 5 points. He hit a 3-pointer. He had 4 rebounds. He did pick up another turnover, so he did finish with 2 turnovers. I don't know the minutes. I get them from Duke's site itself, and for whatever reason, right now, can't get those. So we'll probably have them. You guys can check it out on goduke.com if you're curious about what the minutes are. They'll probably have them some point later today. But he certainly played less minutes because he was not the 6th man or even the 7th man today. He was the 8th or the 9th man. The 6th and 7th guys today were Malik Brown and Isaiah Evans. And Isaiah Evans just slowly but surely, I don't know how many minutes he played today, but in the pecking order, he's slowly but surely moving his way up from not playing in the big games, getting very limited minutes otherwise, to being the 9th guy, to being the 8th guy, and now he's either the 6th or the 7th guy. He had 8 points today, hit another pair of threes. I thought his defense was good, and I really liked the lineup they threw out there with only one, I guess, point guard, if you will, if we're still considering Proctor a point guard. And I think it was Proctor in the first half. Proctor, Evans, Knueppel, Flagg, and Malawach, which I thought was pretty cool. I think anytime this Duke team can get Evans and Knueppel on the court together, I know Lawrence Freeman left a comment, shout out Lawrence, saying we don't know if those two guys, along with Mason Gillis, are our best shooters because we really don't know, how great Darren Harris could be, which I certainly thought was a fair point. I'm just saying from the guys who are consistently in the rotation, Evans and Knueppel have been our best shooters.
And on an afternoon where Knueppel is going to have his arguably against an ACC team. So it's only our second ACC team, but probably his best all-around game that I've seen this season. Yes, he had some really great games against the lesser competition, but this was just a terrific all-around performance. So if he is on and drawing attention, then the microwave with absolutely no conscience whatsoever from 3-point range, Isaiah Evans, just, it's hard. There's only one basketball. And it's really on a day in which Cooper Flagg, was in his beach chair today. And I know that may be a bit harsh because his level of performance is so high that he didn't have to be there.
I don't think so, just in the sense that points for Cooper, they kind of can go up and down, right? But what's typically very consistent is the rebounding and the defensive playmaking. And today, with only 4 rebounds and no steals and no blocks, it's just a very un-Cooper-like game. It's not a great way of phrasing it, but you get what I'm trying to say here. That it wasn't his best game, and he was still pretty good.
It wasn't his best game, and absolutely, do you want him on the floor? Of course you do. It's like at any moment, it's a highlight. But I want to give a particular shout out to, if you remember, he got in a position to do, it wasn't a full breakaway dunk, but he had a really terrific dunk where he was standing there and he did not celebrate. There was no reason to go, yeah. And yet it was ferocious, the dunk. And I kind of like the idea that in this era, you don't have to celebrate every play you make. And I think that's part of what Cooper Flagg, his demeanor on the court is always generally so level yet he is considered to be potentially the number 1 draft pick, and yet nothing seems to rattle him. So in a day in which it may not have been his best day on the court, I definitely want him on the court as much as I can because he does so many other things. And if nothing else, no team can leave him alone. They have got to go every game. Where is Flagg? So I really did, I enjoyed the fact that he is not a celebrating kind of player. And his maturity now as an 18-year-old is really remarkable.
With that being said, I think it's an appropriate time to get to our Olympics medal segment here. And I think today, unlike maybe some other days, this is pretty easy for me to do. So gold medal, Kon Knueppel. I mean, we've said enough. There's not much more to say. He had 18 points, 5 assists. He hit 4 3-pointers. He hit mile watch for several alley-oops. His defense was great. Phenomenal game. Arguably, as you said, I don't even know if it's arguably his best game as a Blue Devil. And then
he was everywhere. He was just like
mile watch,
silver
medal.
Okay.
Phenomenal game from him. Great defensively, and then we got him involved offensively, which we got to continue to do because I hate to keep picking on Mr. Boeheim here, but there was a play where it was late in the shot clock and he hit like a little short range jumper. Yep. He can do that, and it's not like that was lucky. He has great touch around the basket, and we know he's got 5 for 6 from the free throw line. He's a great free throw shooter, and finally, the bronze medal goes to Cooper Flagg. Even though it wasn't his best day, still his birthday, and I do think he was our 3rd best Blue Devil today. And so with that, we wrap up our Olympic medal segment.
I may quibble over the bronze there a bit because Cooper will be holding up a whole lot of medals by the end of this season, and
so.
And Sion was potentially there Proctor was potentially there. The over and Proctor, that sequence that you're referring to when K2 went the length of the court to dive for the ball, and Proctor was behind him diving for the ball. And I'm like going, yeah, that's how they held him to 20 points in the second half. These guys were just terrific. So I may quibble with you a little bit on the bronze, but other than that, gold and silver is spot on.
Fair enough. And I guess a little rapid fire as we close up our show here. A couple of guys we didn't mention yet today. Mason Gillis had 4 points.
Nice.
He had a nice pump fake to like an elbow jumper. Didn't hit his 2 threes. I think it's coming. He also had 3 rebounds, an assist, and a steal. Wish I could say how many minutes, but again, GoDuke.com should be up there later this evening. And then, lastly, we played so well today that Darren Harris and Patrick Gangba got 3 minutes, let's say. Towards the end of the game, Gangba got a couple rebounds. Darren Harris got a look at a 3. Obviously, it's really unfair to judge them on their minutes. Just happy that they were able to get into the game. Good for them. And similarly, Cameron Sheffield got a minute towards the end of the game. Happy for him as well to get into an ACC contest.
And it's funny. In a game in which the defense was so locked down, our best defender, well,
I agree.
Mal is when his presence is just, it's a debate, but I think that the deflections that Malik Brown, who normally causes by his presence just below the free throw line, because his extension, but hard to say really because Mal underneath wreaks havoc. Just havoc underneath there.
It's an awesome pair to have at the center position. And to your point, I agree. I didn't think it was Malik Brown's best game. He still had a steal and a block in less than 20 minutes. So it wasn't his best game. He wasn't bad by any means. It's just we've seen the levels of how disruptive he can be. And today, it just wasn't quite there. But that's okay. And that's the awesome part of having those 2 guys at the center spot. And your third center is Gangba, who's pretty good in his own right. And
I think he got 2 rebounds at the end of the game.
I did note that. And with that being said, though, it gives Coach Shire the luxury to say, all right, this is Malwatch's day. Let's give him 25 minutes and give Brown 15. Or I guess today, no, he played towards the end. So you get the point. But if it was Malik Brown's day, he gets the 25 minutes. And if they're playing equally, you split them. And so it's a nice problem for Coach Shire to have to figure out how to manage the minutes of those 2 guys who are great defenders who just do it in very different ways.
So, this is our second ACC game. And we gave, the game against Louisville was 30 minutes that Louisville was sort of hanging around the game. And then we flipped the switch and
without Cooper, which is still remarkable.
See ya, gotta go. And this is our second game, and it's a first half, only a 5-point lead, to which I said, yeah, but we really didn't play defense yet. And we hold them to 20 points in the second half. Now, there was some, Boeheim made some interesting observations about the ACC. He was admitting for the first time, maybe because he's not coaching, but that the ACC really doesn't look nearly as powerful as they have been in years past. And the other thing he was saying is that the ACC, as opposed to the SEC, has yet to figure out the NIL. I don't know what he was basing that on, but He felt that the SEC has figured it out in a way that has enabled them to attract higher caliber players. It's borne out. Look, we don't know how much NIL money is going to each player, but it's certainly borne out by the rankings of the SEC teams. And so I think that was probably his best observation, as far as I'm concerned, was the overall nature of the ACC this year. So
I wonder, and I'm just thinking out loud. I don't know this or have any inkling to this, but I wonder how much of that is because of we know college football. There's college basketball. They're on kind of different levels in terms of popularity. Not for us, not for us, but for the majority of Americans and the amount of money. And so the thing I'm wondering is, the SEC, they get their football programs going way back have been awesome. And now, just in the past couple of years, basketball has really caught up, and they're awesome in basketball. So I wonder if the football money, just the money that the schools generate from football, has anything to do with them, to Boeheim's point, maybe having more NIL money. I don't know. And
the other thing that happened was that Bill Belichick winds up as the coach at UNC. And it's a very, people's heads are still spinning about this, about the contract, about maybe his son, a bunch of things that may be involved in this. But Belichick, as we know, he will figure out the NIL very quickly and understand how to do this. And all of a sudden, you may see UNC as either he's not going to be able to coach at the college level, possible, or he's going to figure this out. But it is unusual. They flashed up the record so far. It wasn't just the SEC ACC challenge. There were some other games between the two divisions, and the record is just horrendous comparing the two.
Well, Duke's only 1-1.
Right. Yep.
And I guess also for let's try to continue on giving Boeheim some love, because we kind of crushed him earlier. The other thing I want to give him credit for, he was a huge Malik Brown fan. He couldn't hide the fact that he recruited him, he played for him, he loves that guy, and he when Malik Brown took the three at the end of the game, he was rooting for it to go in. That was the only time where you could tell he had a clear rooting interest in the game. So it was fun to see him rooting on one of his former players.
For 40 years, when Boeheim was the coach of Syracuse, I never gave him any love. I never have liked Jim Boeheim as a coach. The only thing is that I admit that he has had some terrific players. When he had Derek Coleman over the years, when he had Pearl Washington over the years, he had some terrific college teams, and he made the most of them. And he deserves to be considered one of the great college coaches. It's just not one of my favorites.
Or favorite color commentator.
Wow.
But all right, I think we've gone off the rails here. Enough with that. Let's wrap up the show. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to the channel. We'll be back. Duke plays Virginia Tech at 4:30 on New Year's Eve. So that should be a Duke win. Virginia Tech is, listen, I gave a lot of credit to a 5-6 Georgia Tech team coming into this game. I will not be doing the same with this Virginia Tech team. It is not a good team, and this is a game that Duke should win handily. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully we can get some more Gangba and Harris minutes in that one. The only concern is that Duke at times this year hasn't played. Their offense hasn't kind of played up to. They've played down to rather the level of competition is what I was trying to say there. And so you're hoping that they come out with the intensity that they'll need. And it is New Year's Eve, so It's a bunch of college kids. It's New Year's Eve. Maybe their heads aren't going to be quite in it. But we will be back for a preview with that one in probably about 5 or 6 days. So be on the lookout for that. Leave a comment below. We want to hear from you guys. Please like this video. Share it with your Duke friends.